I spent the first bit of time just staring at it, just like holding it close to my face and looking at how the e-ink had collected in the way that it did.
This is the Techsploder podcast, conversations with tech professionals about being human in a binary world. Episode 25, Mikah Sargent. Techsploder is made possible by the financial support of our patrons like Kelly, Russell Tammany, what's up Russell, and Noah Donovan. If you like what you hear, head on over to patreon.com/Jason Howell to support the show directly, and thank you for making independent podcasting possible. Hello and welcome to the Techsploder podcast. I'm Jason Howell, and today's guest is very special to me because I worked with him for quite a bit of time at the Twit Podcast Network. His name is none other than Mikah Sargent. Mikah is a tech enthusiast, podcaster, of course, and self-noted empathy advocate. Currently, Mikah serves as a host and producer at twit.tv, so you can find him on shows like Tech News Weekly, Hands on Tech, iOS Today, and beyond. And then outside of Twit, he also co-hosts Clockwise, a really fun show on the Relay FM network that you should check out. Also Total Party Kill on the Incomparable network. And Mikah has a background in journalism and editing. He's been, contributing to platforms like Newsy and Mobile Nations in the past. So he's been all over the tech journalism world. And like I said, I worked with him for a number of years at Twit and just really have missed working with him. He's one of the nicest guys you're going to find on the internet, as you'll see in my conversation with Mikah Sargent. Hello, my good friend, Mikah Sargent, a person who I miss working with because we worked together for so long at Twit and used to share an office and all the things. And now I hardly see you. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Yeah, we don't see each other. We've talked to each other a few times and on podcasts and stuff. But yeah, actually seeing you, it's been a while. And since we hung out, I moved away from California to Portland, loving it here.
I love Portland.
Yeah. I the one thing I was not prepared for, which I have discovered in the past few weeks, where I'm from originally Missouri, when it hails, it's very rare because hail typically means that a tornado is right about to happen. It hails in Portland a lot.
Oh my goodness. So your spidey sense goes, huh?
Yeah. I was like, oh no, is there going to be a tornado? But yeah, I'm walking from my house out to the garage, which is just a little bit away. And I was like, oh, there's just some rain. And then suddenly, doom, 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 doom. I'm going, oh my goodness. Go running back inside. So hail.
Hail. Yeah, it's kind of a crazy weather occurrence when it happens. It doesn't happen very often. Like this has nothing to do with technology, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this, from your perspective. But one of my favorite weather events, and my wife has heard me say it all the time, is when it's sunny and raining at the same time. It's like, it makes me so happy. Like, I don't know, what's yours?
No, I do. I love that. I think that's a good one. Honestly, it's very much like emo kid of me, but I really just love the smell whenever it's just rained. So mine's definitely more common, but I like that, what you're talking about. And this is going to be weird, but I like it when there's about to be a tornado and everything is super quiet and the sky turns green. And then this is very common in Missouri, at least. The sky turns like this weird green color. And it's just, it's the calm before the storm. And there's something like, it's weird to have something be both electrically charged, but also very subtle and calm at the same time. And that like dichotomy that exists there is really interesting.
Yeah. And is it like your anticipation that something's on the way, but it isn't quite yet, and you're appreciating just like, okay, we got what it is.
Take this in and just be zen about it before we get into what could be very scary.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know how you did that growing up with the threat of tornadoes and
left and right.
Yeah. Like
I think it's just what you're used to, right? Because, earthquakes happen in California and people are just like, oh, there was an earthquake. And we're kind of that way with tornadoes, and honestly to everyone's detriment in whatever your common thing is, you don't take it as seriously as you should. And so with tornadoes, we'll be outside just living our lives while the sirens are going off. And then it's like, oh, maybe I'll go down to the basement. But then you get people coming from different places. And so people come and visit us in Missouri, and there's sirens going off. And they're like, why are we not digging a hole into the ground right now?
They're taking it as seriously as maybe you probably should take it
exactly.
seriously. Yeah. Wow. I kind of do a little setup before you and I start talking so people kind of understand who you are and where you're from and everything. Obviously, we worked at Twit for a number of years. We shared an office. One of the questions that I have for you is, like, I know for me in going independent, I spend a lot of time in front of a desk, on my own, and I collaborate with people like this, but it's not quite the same as like sharing space with someone, right? And you had that until very recently. The Twit studio shut down to go fully virtual, and then you moved to Portland. How has that transition been for you, moving from kind of a vibrant office environment where you're literally crossing paths with real humans? And then now kind of doing it on your own?
So honestly, it was the Twit part that was the odd part, because I had come from working for a couple of companies that were doing remote things. So I was for a long period of time working for Mobile Nations, which is now owned by Future, but at the time was not. And people were all over. And so I worked remotely for that company for a really long time. And then right before the company was acquired, a lot of us were laid off, and I was doing freelance writing and freelance, not technically freelance podcasting, but doing podcasts as well. So when I ended up getting the job at Twit, that was my first time being back in an office since my job in college. So I've spent more time doing this thing than that thing. So honestly, that was the adjustment for me. It was difficult sort of adapting myself for, you got to build in the amount of time that it takes to get there. For what part are you staying? Remembering to bring something to eat. Whatever it happened to be, that was more difficult for me than what I do now. I don't know if it's just because I'm used to it, but I really feel like I thrive in this environment of having my space, doing my thing, and then being able to, easily get access to the other things that I need. Whereas when you're not in your space, you don't necessarily have access to those things.
Yeah. And I mean, even sharing spaces, as much as my reality for so long was sharing space with people, working in an office or a studio, be it Twit or CNET or whatever. Sometimes it's nice to have your own space and not feel the need to, I don't want to say entertain, but you know what I mean? Like when someone else is around, there's kind of a need there sometimes.
You're putting on a show, right?
You got to connect, and sometimes you don't want to connect.
Yes, even if it's just a small thing, you are sort of putting on a bit of a thing. You're talking and you're asking, and you want to do those things, right? It's not that it's not part of you, but it is. Totally. It's an added pressure that exists there, where maybe you just really want to come in and get the work done and, do what you need to do. But when it's a shared space, you're doing the good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, goodbye, 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 goodbye. Right. And honestly,
wash, rinse, wrepeat.
Whenever I'd do the good mornings, but I would slink out the back door because I just didn't want to go around doing the goodbyes.
Oh, totally.
It feels, I don't know. It just wasn't for me. I'm not a work in office kind of person because I have not really been that for like the larger part of my life thus far.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Well, I'm happy that everything has worked out, and with the move to Portland, I'm a huge fan of Portland. It's such a cool city.
It's a great place. Yeah.
It's a cool place to be.
We're loving it so far. The dogs love the big yard they have. We have made some great friends here already. And Yeah, there's a lot to do. There's a lot for me to eat as a person who's gluten intolerant. And so I've just really enjoyed it. And now, we've had folks to visit and been able to show them around to places. And we just a couple of weeks ago got our Oregon license plates, so we're official Oregonians now.
Dang,
like 100%. Yeah, so it's been I'd like to think that it requires being in a place for all of the seasons before you truly can say that you're settled, and we're getting close to that now. So we're coming back around to summer, which is when we moved here. So once that happens, then I definitely feel comfortable saying we're settled in Portland for sure.
Awesome. Now you were in the Bay Area, which, many people realize the Bay Area is a very technologically driven, technologically influential place. We see things in the Bay Area out and about in the wild, as far as people using certain pieces of technology and whatever that you just don't see in other places. Right. How does Portland stack up to like your tech experience in Portland stack up to your tech experience in the Bay Area?
That's a great question. I think first and foremost, the driverless cars are not here. So we don't have, ride hailing driverless cars situation going on. I would also say maybe I've seen a few more Vision Pros back in the Bay Area that, like out and about than I would have here. I'd say there's still just as many Cybertrucks, oddly enough, in Portland.
Or they're just really easy to recognize.
They're easy to spot.
So different,
But people's phone, everybody's just kind of doing, as far as I've seen, just doing their thing. There's not sort of as much of a focus on that at all. I'm really kind of coming to terms with it right now and thinking about it. I think something that maybe has been good about being here is a real separation between being, working and being on and at work versus being not at work and being off work. Perhaps I feel like it's more easy to draw the line here because it's not technological and it's not as much of that. And I guess the vibes are different.
Oh, totally. The culture is probably different. Pretty different,
Absolutely.
I guess the word authenticity of around technology kind of comes to mind, whereas in the Bay Area, so much of everything, whether it deserves to be or not, just ends up getting roped into this techno culture.
Yes.
And it's, as you probably very well know because you lived here, it's very easy to fall into the trap when you live here of assuming that so many other places do or use or think or whatever the same way as we do, because we're so surrounded by this very specific particular thing, which is this technologically driven culture here is just so much more influential and so much more involved and integrated than it is in other places. So it's probably good to get that perspective outside of the bubble.
And I think that it then harkens back to, me at a younger age being in the Midwest and being away from it as well, where I was able to have that perspective, I think. In Petaluma, I lived on a street called Technology Lane, for goodness sake. So it was everywhere. And that has not been the experience here. And I think maybe I'm thinking back to the folks that I hung out with in the San Francisco area and how, their devices, they're regularly, we were at a game night one time in Santa Rosa, and we're playing a board game and some like silly phrase comes up and the person pulls out their phone and uses ChatGPT to generate an image of the silly phrase that had come up and is kind of showing it around. And I always I get very stealthy about what I do and what knowledge I have in those situations. A for observing, B for just kind of, again, trying to draw a separation between the two. And C, because I only have so much tech support I can offer in a day before I feel like I'm running on, empty. And so I'm just observing the situation and seeing it. I found it very fascinating. But here, I would say there's not as quick of a draw to some of that stuff, and maybe not as much of an awareness to some of that stuff, and that those tools are available. So yeah, that has been a very clear and easy thing to see.
Kind of sounds refreshing, to be honest.
Yeah.
To get that. Well, you alluded to your childhood, and as I like to do on this show, I really enjoy kind of diving a little into the tech experience because, from our childhood, because my thesis or my overall idea on this show is that I know so many people in the world of technology who are passionate about it, who are doing really cool things, like, all the podcasts and content that you've created over the years and the content you've written, everything. We're moved to do these really cool things in the world of technology. Our stories are very different, but there's so many aspects of it that are probably very similar. Like that passion from technology probably started at a particular moment in your life as it did in mine. And I guess we can kind of start there. Do you have like maybe not necessarily the earliest tech memory, but an early tech memory that you feel is kind of like, that's important to the story of Mikah, that moment right there. Or that device even,
Yeah, they're definitely a device. I suppose a story to start. My stepdad was going to school to be an IT tech, and my dad was a cable guy, but he was more than just like the installation person. He was also the person who would go climb the poles and like fix nodes and do all of that kind of stuff. So he always had a lot of cool gadgets that he was using to like connect to the different nodes and figure out, the signal that's being sent or not being sent. And my stepdad was, bringing home computers and showing us, pulling them apart and sliding in RAM and all sorts of stuff. And so that combined thing together really impacted me from a young age, where I was just eating it up. I wanted to know, my dad's kind of showing us cursory glances of and I'm, asking questions, getting more into it, being like, well, okay, well, what is this? And how does this work? And what do you do? And really getting fascinated by what he was doing. And then on my stepdad side, the same thing applied, where, I'm suddenly wondering how these cards work and what you need to do to get them to cooperate together. And I can remember us having a computer tower with the monitor attached, VGA, and it was a really old machine, ran Windows 98, and it was even like clunky for 98, and always would have things going wrong with it. But every time I'd have something going wrong with it, I would fix it. And so this family computer was this computer that I was able to fix. And I loved being able to fix things for people and, get things going back on track. And I remember we ended up getting, I think my grandparents bought us a newer machine. And so we had this sort of family PC that everybody could access. And so I got to have that old Windows 98 machine. I was able to get it up to running like Windows XP. I had my stepdad had like a cable tuner card, and so we were able to hook cable up to it and like record shows. And
wow.
I was just doing every possible thing I could with it, and figuring out what drivers could be used. But sometimes those drivers didn't work, so you needed to figure out how to adjust the drivers so that they would work for whatever I could do with that machine. I was doing everything I could. I remember buying at one point thermal paste for the CPU, and sort of reattaching the cooling fins on it with new thermal paste, and figuring out everything that was involved in that process. And so I think that those little vignettes absolutely played a role in me being fascinated by technology in terms of the fixing. But what I think got me into it in the first place was my grandparents having this, as old as can be, first model webcam with that yellowed white plastic on the outside of it. And I would set up because you had to have so many lights to even get any kind
the
of
quality
shot.
back then. Yeah.
And spending hours creating stop motion animation videos, photo
with
after
the
photo
webcam?
after photo with the webcam. So I'd take the
wow.
webcam, I'd set it up and put a bunch of lights, and then I would focus it on, usually it was like an action figure or something.
Yes.
Occasionally I would have like Play-Doh, and because I was looking at some of the early stop motion that I saw at the time and going, they didn't take enough time to do that. If they would only have slowed it down just a little bit more, it would look so smooth. So I'm telling you, I was doing probably even less movement than like they would do in modern times, just hours of work to get something to move, because I thought it was so cool. And then, showing these videos where by the end of it, you've got like 4 seconds of video, but I'm going,
I know, I was going to say all that work and you're going to end up with a tiny sliver of video.
Yeah. So that definitely was the thing that got me just fascinated in technology, but not the fixing. And then that stuff came along for the fixing. And then I'll just say one more thing, which is that the item that was my sort of tech awakening, and so like sort of my love of gadgets, was the Kindle Keyboard. We did not have a lot of money growing up. And so every once in a while you do one of these sort of moonshot gift requests for Christmas.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like, you'll probably get this and you'll probably get this, but just throw a moonshot in there. And mine was a Kindle Keyboard. At the time, this was, I think, the second model of Kindle Keyboard. So the cool thing about it was Amazon, silly Amazon, said, we're going to give you free cellular with this. So you'll be able to use this wherever you are and whenever you want, as long as you buy the device, you'll be able to access it. And so I thought that was cool, that I'd literally have this always connected Kindle, but then the idea of having, I was thinking of Hitchhiker's Guide. And so, look at it. And so I asked for this for Christmas, and I remember my mom had put it in a sort of larger box, so I'd have no idea. But she would like pass out the gifts, and it would be, this is the last one, and you always knew your last one was the big Kahuna. And so I got the big Kahuna, and it was a big box, and so I was like, okay, it's not going to be the Kindle Keyboard. I opened it up, and that's what was inside. I immediately took the Christmas money that I had gotten from other grandparents and gave it to my mom and said, here, I need to buy the case right away. And so I gave her the money so that I could buy the case for it. And to this day, I still have this. I regularly go to iFixit whenever the time comes and buy a new battery for it, because the battery dies after a while, the lithium-ion battery inside, and get it working again. And it's just this. I just love it. And even to this day, like, I think it was really well done. And the fact that it has a physical keyboard on there, it is my Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Like, it's just such a cool thing. And I like that it's slightly, it's not perfect white. It's sort of a gray white, and that adds to it for me. Like the text, and the screen. The e-ink at the time, the contrast was not as high as it is these days. And I'm like, no, that's part of it. It all was just so good. I remember getting it and I spent the first bit of time just staring at it, just like holding it close to my face and looking at how the sort of e-ink had collected in the way that it did, and turning it over. And I was a kid who loved to take things apart. Not until I needed to replace the battery when I was much old, like a full-on adult, never came close to even thinking about taking this thing apart, because I thought, I don't want to break it. I don't want anything to happen to it. So
yeah, it looks like a tight piece of technology that you probably don't want to mess with if you don't have to, versus like a desktop computer where the screws are exposed and it's made to like dive in, and you just don't see that with consumer technology like this.
Yeah,
this is also
as a spudger.
Yeah, I'm looking. Yes, exactly. You need it. You need the toolkit, the right tools. As I look at this, also, this was early Kindle era. I do remember this, and you got to give Amazon credit. Like, they hadn't done a lot of hardware before they did the Kindle, and when they did, they really created some really great hardware considering what they were doing. They were kind of the Apple of ebook readers.
I 100% agree. I do. I think that, I mean, even still, that design, I hold it in my hands and the way the buttons press on the side feels great. The keyboard still feels great. It's very lightweight for the time. And yeah, it was just so well done. And it was like Star Trek pad, Hitchhiker's Guide to the, like it's every possible nerd dream come true in this device. And I loved it so much. It was awesome.
Were you a big time reader when you were a kid? Like what was it as far as your reason to have the Kindle? Like Kindle took me a while to come around to, just because admittedly, like I'm just not a huge book reader. Like I'd rather listen to audio podcasts than sit down with a book, and same with Kindle. But yeah,
absolutely. At the time, yeah. I did not have, I don't think I even had the knowledge of audiobooks at the time. If I look back, that could have changed sort of the trajectory for me.
Yeah.
But I don't think I even had the knowledge of audiobooks at the time, because now that is almost exclusively the way that I consume books is audiobooks.
And our lives are a lot busier. We're a lot more mobile, and we've got so many things going on. Sometimes the audiobook just makes more sense because it fits into the things we're already doing. When you're a kid, that's kind of less of an issue.
Absolutely. And I had some pretty bad, because I was a really anxious kid. And so I had a lot of insomnia as a kid. And I would stay the night with my great-grandparents, with my grandparents. And so this was something that I could do when I was trying to go to bed and, wasn't able to sleep. So I think that played a role in it. But honestly, Jason, I think this thing could have only had one book on it and nothing else could be added, and I still would have wanted it for what it was. It was just this thing I thought was so cool that it could have a bunch of books, but that it connected to the internet regardless of where I was, which isn't 100% true, but that's how I thought of it at the time because of the cellular connection. And I could type things on it. And so it would not have mattered to me. It wasn't that I could read a bunch of books. That wasn't the first reason. That was maybe the sixth reason that I wanted it.
That's so interesting when I think of Kindle. Yeah, that's not at all what I think. So are you browsing the web? Are you?
I did occasionally.
Thoughts or what?
It did. It had a little web browser. So really, what I wanted to use it for more than anything was I knew that Kindle had a way to connect with, rest in peace, Google Reader. And so I could get my Google Reader RSS sent to the Kindle, and I could read my web blogs, because I, at the time, was reading a bunch of tech blogs and a bunch of graphic design blogs, and I was able to look at all of those on the Kindle. And that was the coolest thing to me. I didn't do a whole lot of just going to the web and browsing, because it would take a million billion years to load. But being able to just instead of sitting at the family computer and hitting J, go to the next thing and read through all of these tech blogs, this was a way to kind of have it. It felt very, I guess, adult to me too, in terms of I've got my cup of coffee and I'm reading my morning newspaper. My pink is out as I browse the
digital
Kindle
pages.
So it was as much for the vibes as it was for the practicality of it. But thinking back now, definitely it was my RSS reader, so to speak, that made it so cool.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. And then your practice of reading RSS continues based on what you do and following news.
Absolutely.
That's an ingrained habit at this point.
Well, and what's weird is that I didn't think about doing any of this as a job, despite the fact that it was all sitting there in the background, until much later, because I wanted to go into graphic design. I wanted to go into advertising, and that's what I went to school for originally. The degree was strategic communication, and it was an odd thing because Missouri, specifically Columbia, Missouri has, and this is not just alma mater speak, but is genuinely one of the best journalism schools in the country. And the journalism program, because a lot of people with journalism degrees go into PR, they decided to add a new program called strategic communication that essentially encompassed advertising and PR and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, I wanted to be a graphic designer who went and worked at a creative agency and made, advertisements and all sorts of stuff. But it was one summer I was back during the break and I was reading through my RSS feeds, and a friend of mine, his dad was the one that was like, you may, I could just imagine you at one of those Apple events, writing about what's going on there. And that really was I guess I could too.
I could do
and
that.
Yeah. So years later, when I was at an Apple event, I ended up texting him from that Apple event and said, I remember back when you said this to me, and here it is, actually happening. So we had amazing. A little bit of a callback, which was cool.
So do you think that, again, I'm just kind of staring at the Kindle Keyboard on a separate screen here and kind of thinking about the connections or the connective tissue between that device and, I think, have you always been an iOS or an Apple device, like iPhone user, or was it Android before that? When I think of you, I think of iPhone, and I don't know if that's founded or not.
No, that is. It is. I mean, it's what I always wanted. I couldn't have it at first because it was too expensive.
Sure.
So I started out on, a flip phone and then moved to this little sort of BlackBerry knockoff, but I didn't have BlackBerry. And then I went to the Sprint Evo 4G. And that was the one that was kind of my smartphone before I was finally able to convince my grandma to let me join her phone plan, at which point I was able to move into iPhone territory. But yes, I remember the Sprint Evo 4G. It had like a red back and it had a kickstand. And that was super cool. But what happened was the battery started to overheat on me regularly. And so it'd be in my pocket and it'd get so hot. And so I was worried about it. So I thought, okay, maybe the battery's bad. I bought a new battery for it. It still kept overheating. And so I thought, okay, I can't keep using this because I'm worried as I'm walking around campus that it's going to catch fire in my pocket or something.
Don't want that. Nope.
No, didn't want that.
Nope.
And so, I was able to maneuver my way into, I think, iPhone 4S at the time was the model of iPhone that I had. And from that point, like the rest is history in terms of, because in high school, I had a Dell laptop, and because I had an iPod, I had Apple stickers, and I took the Apple sticker and put it over the Dell logo on the back of my laptop, and I installed software on my machine that made Windows look like it was Mac OS. I always wanted to be on Mac OS. I knew as a graphic designer, I can even say as a graphic designer, because I was in high school being paid as a graphic designer. And so as a graphic designer and aspiring to be even more than that, I knew that was the platform that all of the people that I followed and found interesting were using. And the tools were there as far as I saw it. So I just always wanted to be in the Apple ecosystem for that reason, but it was mostly Mac based. The iPhone I just thought was cool, but as far as the strong desire, it was all about the Mac. And to this day, I love the Mac. I love my Mac. It's the best. The iPhone now is kind of boring to me, but my Mac, I still I think it's great. So that has never gone away in terms of that.
Yeah. I mean, Apple, I guess all smartphones, the kind of progress that we saw in the early 2010s, and every year it was some new major kind of update or upgrade or feature
redesign,
or whatever, and it was really exciting. And we don't see that much anymore. You were talking about, oh, sorry, go.
I was just gonna say, to be fair, the Mac really hasn't changed much, and Mac OS hasn't changed much. So I don't know
why,
but I just really love, I love Mac.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have the Mac Studio. So I have the Mac Studio, which is what I'm using right now, which is, for, like a pretty small considering the power that's in them, kind of brick size, large brick, but, brick size device. Then down on the floor, I have an old Mac Pro, like the cheese grater.
Oh, yes.
Late, 2010s Mac or
Throwback,
late 2000s throwback Mac Pro.
Pre-trash can.
Pre-trash can. Yeah, I never had the trash can, but definitely have the cheese grater. I don't know what to do with it. Like, I guess I could, get it recycled or whatever you do with these things.
It's a piece of history at this point.
Yeah. I mean, it's just down there. It's out of the way. Maybe I just keep it. I don't know.
Keep it for now. Maybe one day you could turn it into an art project. Turn it into like an aquarium or something.
Yeah, my kids can do that maybe. They'll be like, oh, relic from
this. Yeah, we don't have aluminum anymore. Let's take this and make a lot of money off of it.
Yeah. Do you happen to know the the flip phone that you had by chance?
Oh boy,
that's a hard one for me. Like I've tried to come up with the flip phone.
It was a feature phone.
I can't do it.
Yeah, it was just some whatever Sprint had at the time is the flip phone that I had. I wish I could remember because I loved my little blue BlackBerry knockoff.
Yeah, I was curious about that one too because you said it's not BlackBerry, but it's like
see
BlackBerry.
If I can't find it.
Yeah.
Because it was sort of wrecked. Oh, there it is. The Sprint Sanyo SANYO, and then it's the SCP2700. Wow, I can even remember SCP2700. That just came to me.
Sprint Sanyo Juno SCP2700.
Yes,
and it's kind of a blue here. I'm gonna go ahead.
Yeah, it's like blue with green numbers on it.
Let's see here. Does it? There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had that thing, and the back of it's very textured, and so it was a nice little fidget too.
Yeah,
I could hold it and sort of rub my finger across the back of the phone, and yeah, like I felt very much business oriented, which was I really enjoyed that phone, despite the fact that it didn't I didn't have access to BlackBerry Messenger or anything like that. I had some friends who were BlackBerry, BlackBerry folks, but yeah, that one worked quite well for me. The camera was crud.
Of course, so many of them were back then. Yeah. I have some images from. God, I can't even remember what the phone is. Was it a chocolate, LG chocolate? Maybe?
Oh yeah. That sounds familiar.
And I've got them in my Google Photos library where I have all my digital photo life is listed there. And man, the photo quality of those early flip phones just horrible. But it's what you had, and it was very liberating to just have that in your pocket and take it. It also had a very small display, so it's not like the quality mattered much because on that small display it looked fine.
Yeah, you're holding it up to your face real close. Okay, I can see my dog in there.
Yeah. It's only when you pull it up on a big screen monitor when you realize just how horrible it looks.
But, retina display. Oh dear.
Yeah, we've really come a long way as far as that's concerned. Gonna take a super quick break, and then I've got some other fun questions to ask you. So everybody hold tight. We'll be back in a second. All right, this question is fun, though sometimes it doesn't work out because sometimes we just don't have things nearby. But do you have an interesting piece of technology within reach of you right now that you're willing to show on the camera?
Let's see. Yes, I do.
Excellent. What you got?
In fact, it's kind of hard to choose. Do I want to do this one or do I want to do?
I know, right? Like I'm looking around.
I think I'll do this. Yeah. So this is, so I'm holding up for people who are listening. It's a white rectangle, and it has a U on it. And some nerds might be familiar with the Ubiquiti logo.
Okay.
And this is actually a silicone case, and inside it's a Russian nesting doll situation, is an even smaller little rectangle with the Ubiquiti logo on that. And so this is a really cool little thing. the case lets you put it on the back of your MagSafe or magnetic phone, and it works with an app called Wi-Fi Man. And what this does is it's a Wi-Fi spectrum analyzer. And when paired with the app, you can walk around in your space and map out your network strength. And because it works with the app, you can also use AR to quite literally make a 3D model of your space and see where the signal is good and where the signal is bad. Now, most of the time, Wi-Fi spectrum stuff is for huge networks and doctors' offices or malls or what have you.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily an important thing to have at home. However, I live in a home from 1908 or something. It's a very, 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 very old home that has been, of course, remodeled, but a lot of the original stuff is still here. So when we first moved in, I came to understand that Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and other wireless signals have trouble making it from room to room. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to map out the space and see where things are good, where things are bad, to properly place the different Wi-Fi devices that we have, Wi-Fi routers that we have in the home. Of course, my main stuff like this that I'm talking on is wired, but for the wireless stuff, that's what this does. And so I was on a podcast and somebody had brought up Wi-Fi Man, the app, because you can get the app for your Mac. I think it's actually available across all platforms, but you can get it for your phone, you can get it for your computer, and it does the basics. But to be able to actually split the channels up for your Wi-Fi to say, okay, here's the 2.4 gigahertz, here's the 5, here's the 6, here's the channels of each of those signals, and everything in between, up and down from there, this thing can show you. It can talk about busyness. It can talk. I mean, it's really cool. And so by the end of it, you have this green to yellow to red mapping of your space to see how things are going in your home. So this is a pretty neat little thing. It is. Last I looked, it was out of stock, but perhaps Wi-Fi Man Wizard. Wireless spectrum analyzer.
Interesting. And yes. So has it been really useful for figuring out troubleshooting at your house? What have you found?
So basically what I discovered is, some of it was the obvious in terms of if you can place your router in the middle space of a home and, kind of up. Sure, we know that. But what it helped me with was particularly with the upper floor, trying to figure out where to place the main floor, because we don't have a separate router on the upper floor. There's not enough. It wouldn't be necessary in theory. So we just needed to figure out in the middle, in the main floor, where to put the router. And so we did some moving. I did some moving around of that based on it. But one thing that it did show me is, holy cow, I don't know how anything ever worked in the townhome I was living in, because the busyness of that network in that townhome was ridiculous on the 2.4 gigahertz network, because you're attached to everyone's so close to you.
Everyone, wall to wall.
It's so quiet, not only because no one's attached to us, but also, again, this home is so old that the outside walls definitely have a lot of metal in them. And so the signals aren't coming in, which is great. So, there's also been a lot more, where before I would have trouble accessing a camera that was outside, because it was trying to send the signal through the home, through everybody else's signals all at once. That hasn't been an issue here. So yeah, I just kind of learned some interesting things. I think ultimately it was not necessary to own it, but it's just cool to have and to be able to map out the home anyway. And then also, if I have a friend who's trying to figure it out in their space, I can always, take it over there and give it a go. And also figure out, hey, another great use for it is, hey, you might want to switch to the 2.4 gigahertz network on this device instead of going for the 5, because the 5 is having trouble reaching. That's another reason why you might want to see it.
I'm always making that guess, right? You know, it's like 2.4 versus 5. It's like, I don't know, 5's more, so I'll just go there.
Right.
But yeah, I don't actually know that that's based in any sort of, I mean, that's probably not the best way to determine, let's just say.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. There's so much more that's involved with it, and kind of figuring out, again, it's almost like we know that because 5 is larger, so to speak. My voice is about to go. Hold on. We know that because 5 is larger, it has trouble passing through walls and stuff. And so, yeah, there's just a lot. There's some magic involved for sure in wireless networking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not quite. Yeah, networking in general. I love a lot of things about technology, but boy, do I not enjoy networking. Networking is just a topic that just like, I have zero interest in, and it's complicated, and I just don't want to learn it. And it's just, I resist it. I totally resist it.
Yeah. And when we first moved here, getting things set up with fiber, things work a little differently.
Yeah.
And so we had to, I keep saying we, but I'm the techie. So I had to figure out how to get it set up in a different way, and how it interacted with our routers versus before, where I'm used to just like having my own modem and router situation. Mm-hmm. This doesn't work exactly that. I mean, it was very involved, but it's okay. It's all good now. It just took some time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and you have the right tool to do that as well, so that's good. Is there a piece of technology that you've had in your lifetime so far that you enjoyed, but you got rid of at one point, and you just regret letting go of that technology? Like, I know I have gotten rid of technology and be like, damn, I wish I still had that. If only just to like look at it and just like push the buttons.
Yes. There was a device that I got one Christmas that was a little like multimedia player made by Mattel, called Juice Box. And the Juice Box was just this little, I don't know, hunk of plastic with a screen on it. And you could put little Juice Box cartridges into it, and they would play media. And so I had like some Ed, Edd and Eddy episodes from Cartoon Network, some Codename Kids Next Door episodes. There were a lot of different like music videos and other types of video content, but most of mine was just Cartoon Network stuff. And so it was like a video player for back in the day. You know, it was called the Juice Box. And now, I'd love to have it just to see again how far
we've come. Oh my goodness.
240 by 160 pixel resolution.
God, that's more than I was going to guess like 360 or something like that. So that's even less than what I was thinking. Wow. That's crazy. I've never heard of the Juice Box before.
It was cool. 2 megabytes of RAM.
Oh God.
It ran Linux, and of course, like heavily, skinned Linux, and the screen was 2.7 inches in size with that 240 by 160 resolution.
Wow. That's so cool. But then, at the same time, like we didn't really have, this is 2004, 2002?
2004, yeah.
4. So, I mean, I guess we had smartphones, but we weren't watching a lot of video. Sorry, not smartphones. We had flip phones. We had phones. We had cell phones. Let's put it that way. And we weren't watching full videos on it. Did the iPod Nano even exist? The iPod Video or whatever. Maybe,
but it would have been too expensive for us.
Yeah.
And so, and I was young enough to where something like this made sense.
Yeah, right.
It was a little heftier, so you could just carry it around and not worry about it.
Right. Had a little bit of like a toy based toughness to it, I suppose.
I didn't realize it was 10 frames per second maximum playback.
Whoa. But
That's wild. I wouldn't have known at the time.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't have. It's just part of the limitation of the device, and whatever, it is what it is. If you were making your stop motion animations, this would have been a great
That would have been perfect.
10 frames a second, you could have made a full, motion picture. Film.
Absolutely.
That was another question I had. Do you still have those?
No, I wish. I wish. They were on my grandparents' computer, and I never thought to even save them past that. I wish. Yeah, that's sad. That's real sad.
I think about that stuff, and just the fact, you know what, it existed in a moment in time. It exists as a memory. But wouldn't it be cool to be able to go back and watch it back?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely it would. It would give me all the feels.
Yeah, totally. I definitely have that.
Kids, save the things you're working on now these days.
Now it's integrated. You know what I mean? If I get a video sent to me via text message, it automatically uploads to my cloud storage. So
the desktop where I would have saved it at the time would have been uploaded to cloud if it was modern days. But, back then, it didn't have cloud, and you also were just time to clear off the desktop. Don't need this stuff anymore.
Totally. Just need space. Oh, I'll never think twice about it. Just goodbye. Sorry, now I'm going to cough. Finally, as we're rounding things out, I also like to ask, alternate universe Mikah, if technology was not the thing that you do and spend so much of your time doing and working with and being interested in and all this, what would alternate universe Mikah Sargent be doing? Or
he would be a general contractor who either had his license in plumbing or electrical, and would be working toward getting the other one. My grandparents growing up would buy and refurb houses, and I learned a lot from them. My grandpa was a carpenter, and he did it all for the stuff that he could on his own house, and then of course you have to hire someone to do it outwardly. So I'd watch just hours and hours of things like HGTV, where I was just I just want to be a contractor. I want to be a general contractor. It'd be so cool, so that I could buy and flip houses. To this day, so I guess it's not even an alternate universe really, in the sense that it's not an opposite of me. And honestly, electrical stuff is still kind of a technology, but carpentry, electrical, plumbing, all that kind of stuff. And I do as much of that as I can. It's one of, the reasons why in this world where it's hard to do so, I still somehow dream to own a home so that I can, do all that stuff on my own home, because I do as much of that stuff as I can while still following leases.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. As much as they'll allow you to do and tell you to own. But in a way, it's kind of its own puzzle. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just on a much larger scale. I'm happy you enjoy it as much as you do. I don't enjoy it as much. Sometimes it depends on the job, but I can understand why people do. It really does kind of seem like Lego at large,
Yeah, exactly. I love that.
Cool stuff. Mikah, I adore you. I really enjoyed working with you as much as we did at TWiT, and I miss working with you, but I'm happy that we still get the opportunity to catch up in shows like this. And sometimes I come on Tech News Weekly and visit the old show. And so I appreciate you. Thank you so much for talking tech with me and going back into nostalgia territory with me. It's always so much fun.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. It's not something I get to do too often. So it's nice to get to throw the mind back and think about all the things. So thank you.
Exactly. Right on. Thank you, Mikah. All right. Huge thank you to my friend, Mikah Sargent. Always great getting the chance to podcast with Mikah, and I'm sure there will be more opportunities in the future. If you want to find everything about this show, all you got to do is go to techsploder.com. That is the website that has all the information about what we're doing with this podcast, which we do this podcast right now about once a month. I'd love to scale that up at some point, but I kind of have to wait until I have more help because it takes a lot of time, everything that I've got going on with the YouTube channel of this podcast. So for now, once a month, if you go to techsploder.com, you can find all the the past episodes and dive into, the archives there and be notified when there is a new episode. You'll see it right there. You get exclusive access to live pre-recordings if you become a patron. That's patreon.com/Jason Howell. There you get those, exclusive pre-recording access abilities. You get ad-free shows, early access to my YouTube videos, the ones that don't have an embargo anyways, and a Discord community, and so much more. You actually get the chance to get a t-shirt if you become an executive producer. And let me tell you, I appreciate my executive producers. Thank you so much to Jeffrey Maricini, John Cuny, and WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina. That can all be found at patreon.com/Jason Howell. Thank you again to our guest, Mikah Sargent. Thanks to you for watching and listening. And we'll see you next time on another episode of the Techsploder podcast. Bye, everybody.